Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Adventures. And today, it looks like we're doing Planet Zoo mod spotlights. We got part 14 coming up. So this is mods that we go through and add new animals to Planet Zoo and maybe even fix some things we'll have a look through. So I'm very excited to go have a look at these animals today. We've got a nice selection of mammals and a bunch of cool things. So I'm really excited to get into this one. So today we're going to be starting with this little guy here, if we can find it. Here we are. This is the Kinkajou. So the Kinkajou is a tropical rainforest mammal from the family Procyon. And these guys are related to like raccoons, oligos, coyotes, and those guys. They're the only member of the genus Portos, and also known as the honey bear, which is pretty cute, even though that's already given to the sun bear, but they're not very related at all. So the cool thing about these guys is that they've also adapted to this arboreal lifestyle, that they evolve independently from other animals like mustelids and primates and things. So they're very interesting, like independent evolution that they have going on. So these guys come from South America. They're quite common, and they have these round heads. You can see these large eyes, small pointed snout, and short limbs and prehensile tail. The total head and body length is about 82 to 133 centimeters, so a little bit over a meter long at the biggest. And the tail measures between 39 and 57 centimeters. Their weight ranges from 1.4 to 4.6 kilograms, and females are generally smaller than males, as is the case with most mammals. And these coats vary typically throughout the year. They have several shades such as tawny, olive, wood brown, and yellowish tanny. They've been reported in the upper part of the coat and upper side of the tail, while the underparts and the lower side of the tail have been observed as bluff, tawny, or brownish yellow. So that depends also on the individual, just genes. A lot of colour variation within the animal, which is pretty cool. So what really makes them weird is that compared to other procyonids or animals like raccoons and such, they have these more rounded ears, extendable tongues, and prehensile tails, which is really, really weird because they evolved as oligos, and Kinkajous are larger than oligos, but they have like evolved independently this kind of look. And then you have animals like the binturong. This is a really good example of convergent evolution. You have the binturong, which is not that closely related to these guys, but they evolved it independently. So that's pretty cool. So they range from the Sierra Madres to in Mexico, and then they through the Central America to Bolivia, then east the Andes and southeastern Brazil. They range in a bunch of different type of closed canopy tropical forests, including lowland forest, montane, dry forest, gully forest, and secondary forest. And a big issue for these guys, of course, is deforestation, because if you're a tree climbing animal and there's no trees, you're in a bit of spotted bother. So these guys are omnivorous. They eat a lot of fruit and mainly figs, but they will also eat things like seeds and stuff. They're also a very important seed disperser, so they help spread seeds of different plants across the Amazon forests and all that. And they will occasionally eat birds, eggs, and small vertebrates, even though they can generally, like 90% of their diet is fruit and figs and things. So yeah, these guys also spend most of their time in the trees, which they're well adapted. It's kind of obvious there. And they use their prehensile tail as sort of a fifth hand to be able to help them climb, similar to monkeys and other animals that have this kind of an adaptation. Oh, I want to get a good look at this one. But no. I don't want to edit it. There we are. He did like a moonwalker. So these guys are usually solitary, but can form large groups and closely associate with oligos, and they will drive the smaller oligos away from food. And these guys are nocturnal. They're typically active between 7 p.m. at midnight and again for an hour before dawn, and usually during the daylight hours they will sleep in tree hollows and pretty much whatever they can find. And the big issue for these guys is also deforestation, but also they're often kept as exotic pets, which are since of their just docile demeanor and that. But they can occasionally be aggressive and dislike sudden movements, noises, and being awake during the day. And this can be a bit of an issue because these guys can be imported legally out of their habitat. And they have been used to, they haven't been used, but they can spread diseases through their feces and oral, like saliva and things. So it's a big issue, especially when you're importing them from a country that with novel diseases that you don't have in places like the States. But they can live a pretty long time. They can live up to, on average, 23 years in captivity, and maximum is 41 years. So they do live a long time if you decide to get one as a pet, even though you probably shouldn't, because it's fueling the illegal pet trade. So I would not do that if I was you. Unless you get a captive bred one. That's the same with any animal that you want to buy, exotic animal you want to buy as a pet. Always get captive bred, because it'll be better for you, better for the animal, and better for your wallet in the long term, because it won't die instantly on you. But yeah, so now that we've got the first one done, we're going to move on to the pudu. So we've got the northern pudu. Let's have a look here. Very cute little antelope. This is the female. We'll have a look at the male, since he's got the more interesting thing going on. So we've got another animal, South America. These are two species of South American deer and are the world's smallest deer. And there's the northern pudu and the southern pudu. This is obviously the northern pudu. And they're from southwestern Chile and southwestern Argentina. That's where the southern one's from, but the northern one is from Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. So they get average sizes between 32 and 44 centimeters tall, and up to 85 centimeters long, so not even a meter long. And the southern pudu is classified as near threatened. So there is potential threats to these guys, while the northern pudu is data deficient. That means we don't have enough data or information to really make a good judgment. So yeah, let's move down here. So these guys are mentioned the world's smallest deer, which is pretty interesting. They can get to 34, 44 and weigh up to 12 kilograms, but the highest recorded weight was 13 kilograms. They have sexual dimorphism, of course, as the female has no antlers. And these males have these short spiraled antlers that are like this, almost like a little goat antlers, which is pretty cute. And they can extend up to 6.5 to 7.5 centimeters long. And they have short hooves, 2 claws, and short tails about 4 to 4.5 centimeters long. And their coat can vary a lot, but they're usually long and stiff with a reddish brown to dark hue. So these guys are solitary usually, and they will largely hard to spot because they're very secretive. They're also crepuscular. That means they're mostly active during the morning and late afternoon and in the evening. And their home ranges generally extends to 16 to 25 hectares or 40 to 62 acres. And most of this would be consisting of crisscrossing pudu trodden paths, so it's kind of just where you go. He's having a cute sleep. So predators of these guys include horned owls, Andean fox, Mangolian fox, cougars, and other small cats. They're very wary, and when they are actually pretty prolific climbers, jumpers, and sprinters, they flee in a zigzag pattern away from predators, which is pretty cool. The lifespan of these pudus can be from 8 to 10 years in the wild, and the longest lifespan was 15 years and 9 months. And it's pretty rare because, obviously, in the wild, there's a lot of things when hunting them, and sometimes care can be an issue. And these guys have a pretty herbivorous diet, of course. They consume vines, leaves from low trees, shrubs, pretty much anything that's a plant, they'll eat it, and fallen fruit. And they can survive without drinking water for a long period due to the high water content from the foliage in their diet. So that helps them in their more alpine areas as well. So these guys only come together for rut, and the gestation period for these guys is about 202 to 223 days, or about 7 months, with an average being 210 days. The single offspring, or sometimes twins, are born during the astral spring between November and January, and newborns weigh between 700 to 1,000 grams, with an average birth weight being about 890 grams. Females and males were the same at birth. These fawns have like a reddish-brown fur, with southern pudus having white spots along this way. It's a good way to differentiate them. They're usually weaned at about 2 months old, and females mature at about 6 months old, while males will mature at 8 to 12. And fawns generally fully grown in 3 months, but may stay with their mother from 8 to 12 months. So big threats to these guys include deforestation, of course. This happens to a lot of animals living in South America, where their land is cleared for human development, cattle ranching, agriculture, logging, or exotic tree plantations. Also, they are taken out the wild as pets, usually illegally exported as well, and they're overhunted by trained dogs. And Red deers that have been recently introduced into the areas where these guys are from often not compete with them for food and can be susceptible to parasites from dogs such as bladderworm, lungworm, roundworms, and heartworms. So that's not very good for these guys. That's a big issue. But they're so cute, so cannot be mad at them. And now we've got another Artiodactyl. That's the big word for today. We have got the Dama Gazelle. We've got a nice male here. Look at him, isn't he? Looks cool. So the Dama Gazelle, also known as the Aardwolf Gazelle or the Mahora Gazelle, lives in Africa, in the Sahara Desert and the Sahel. They're a critically endangered species and disappeared from most of its former range due to overhunting and habitat loss, and natural populations only live in Chad, Mali, and Niger. Their habitat includes grasslands, shrublands, semi-deserts, open savannas, and plateaus. And they usually eat, of course, like most antelopes, lots of grasses, leaves, shoots, and fruits. So these guys have like this really cool reddish-brown head and neck, and both sexes usually have these kind of S-shaped horns going up there. It's pretty cool. They can get between 90 to 100 centimeters tall at the shoulder and weigh between 35 and 75 kilograms, and have a lifespan of about 12 years in the wild and 18 in captivity. So, like other antelopes, they tend to be very strong when they're born and can run with the herd. And they're considered one of the largest species of gazelle, if not the largest, with incredibly long legs, and they've got these these long legs allow them obviously to run further like that, but they also allow more surface area for heat to escape their bodies, especially when they live in this hot desert environment that they do. And these guys are also a diurnal species, which means that they are active during the day, and they will use this behavior called pronking to warn herd members of danger, where they'll hop up and down on their forelegs, and with all things of them stiff, just kind of like, it's quite funny. And males will also establish territories during the mating season, where they mark with urine and dung piles with glands in their eyes as well, to establish the territory to say, don't mess with me, I'm the big boss. So the big threat to these guys, of course, was a lot of not deforestation, but taking over by livestock, because obviously if you're trying to farm livestock in the desert, it's really hard, and often you take a lot of the water that's available there and leaves not much for these guys. Especially habitat destruction. They cut down the branches of the trees that these guys want to feed on, and often get killed. And also are very, very famous for hunting. So they were hunted pretty mercilessly compared to other antelope, and that's why they're considered critically endangered. And of course, civil unrest, especially in areas of Sudan, which the areas they live in tend to be very full of civil war and things like that, so that's put a damper on their conservation. So this is a species that was really kept a lot in reserves, and they were kept a lot in zoos where they were bred up, and similar to things like Prisqualsi horses and Cementauronixes, they're kind of bred up in captivity and then released back into the wild. So small populations was a big issue, so they kind of just tried to mix and match them as much as possible. In 2015, there was like a big reintroduction project for these guys. They were released in a semi-enclosed facility and kind of monitored. So now they're kind of living in the wild, and they're doing okay, but obviously being a critically endangered species, they're still at a very high risk of extinction. We can't let these guys go extinct. They're such a cool antelope. I love to look at them. Very, very cool. So now we're going to move on to the next animal. We have got, hopefully they're still young. Are they grown up? Oh, they've grown up, I think. Yeah, they've grown up, but I wanted to show you the baby jackals. But we've got the black-backed jackal, a very, very cool boy. So this is a medium-sized canine native to Eastern and Southern Africa. And one region includes, they pretty much live South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and that area as long as the eastern coastline, including Kenya, Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. Don't kill me for pronunciations. I'm only Kiwi. I don't know how to pronounce a lot of these African words, but they're considered least concerned because they're very, very widespread and very, very adaptable. But they are still prosecuted as a livestock predator, so they're known to kill like guinea fowl and chickens and things like that, and also a good vector for rabies, which affects other mammals. That's bad. So they're a very, very ancient species. They're in their own genus now, considered usually Lupella, which is pretty cool. These guys have changed little since the Pleistocene, and they're the most basal wolf-like canid, and they're also closely related to the side-striped jackal. So this is the black stripe, the other side's side-striped. And these guys are also monogamous, which means young, they'll live together and kind of just in pairs instead of swapping around. They're not polygamous. And young may remain with their family to help raise new generations of pups. And the black-backed jackals are right away food sources. They pretty much eat what they can. Pretty much small to medium-sized animals, including invertebrates, small rodents, birds, literally just whatever they can, small antelope, as well as some plant material and human refuge. So they might eat some human scraps. Just funny. So these guys also get a decent size. They weigh between 6 and 13 kilos, stand 38 to 48 centimeters at the shoulder, and measure 67 to 8.1 centimeters in body length. And they get their name, the black-backed jackals, because they have this rare, black and white pattern down their back, and especially this black stripe down here that gives their name the blackback. So these guys, as I mentioned, they were monogamous and territorial, and they territorial. So they, like other canids, they will scent mark to usually defend their territories, and they will be social with each other and make sounds like meowping, wolfing, cackling, and all that. And they sound particularly frantic when mobbing a leopard in areas where they're sympatric, which means they live together with African golden wolves. They do not howl, but I said they yelp more, in contrasts the black-backed jackals in southern Africa howl much golden jackals, and when they're trapped, they cackle like foxes, apparently. Look at you go, very cute. So the mating season of these guys takes place between late May and August, with a gestation period of 60 days. Pups are born during July to October, and summer births is thought to be timed to coincide with the population of valley rats and four-striped grass mice, where winter births are timed with ungulate calving seasons. So litters consist of 1 to 9 pups, which are born blind. For the first week of their lives, they're kept at the Cantus in their dam, where they sire an elder offspring and provide food. The pups open their eyes at 8 to 10 days and emerge from the den at the age of 3 weeks. They are weaned at 8 to 9 years old and can hunt for themselves at age 6 months. Sexual maturity is obtained at 11 months, though few black-backed jackals reproduce at their first year, so they might wait for their second year. Unlike golden jackals, they have a comparatively acceptable interpack relationships, so they kind of also become quarrelsome with age, and they get these more dominant, rigid dominance hierarchies. Can't believe I can't speak today, but so that means the dominant punks usually get more food and things like that. And they may disperse if the things get too heated. They'll disperse and go their own ways. And they have an average lifespan in the wild of 7 years, and though captive specimens kill up to 14, 15 years just because they don't have to fight to survive. See, as I mentioned, these guys live in a wide range of habitats: savannas, farmlands, alpine areas, coastal deserts, pretty much everywhere they can find food. They eat all sorts of things like some vertebrates, crickets, termites, scorpions, including rodents and hares. And then you have young antelopes, carrion birds. They can literally just eat whatever they can. They're very, very generalist, which is pretty good for these guys. And these guys also, big thing for hunting. They're considered least concerned because they're doing quite well, but obviously hunting and loss of habitat can be a big issue of these guys. But they seem to be adapting semi-well to living with people. A lot of populations they seem to be replacing themselves, so that's good. And I think they're cute, and they should be around for a while. Let's see are those still babies? I really want to see babies. There we have. We got some juveniles. Look at this baby one. He's got big ears. He's very, very cute. Adorable. That was perfect timing, so that's good. But anyway, what we're going to do now is move to the next animal. We've got another canid. We have got the... Let's see if we can find the dot. This is a cute boy. We've got the bat-eared fox, also known as Octocyon mongolius or something. Pronunciation's not my forte right now. There is the adults. They're all sleeping. But yeah, we'll have a look anyway. So, they have these very large ears where they get the name bat ears, because they kind of look like the ears of a bat. They have a big role in thermoregulation, and their name, the bat-eared fox, refers to their similarity with the Egyptian slit-faced bat, which is abundant in these regions, also has very large ears. So, these guys are found in like 2 populations. There's like 1 population in southern Africa and 1 in eastern Africa. And they're pretty small canids. They range in weights from about 3 to 5 kilos, with a head to body length of 46 to 66 centimeters, tail length of 22 to 34 centimeters, and a shoulder height of 30 to 40 centimeters. And these big ears can get up to 11 to 13 centimeters. So they look very, very cute. So generally they have these tan-colored or ray agouti guard heads that make them get this appearance. And I think it just looks really, really cool, really nice pattern. The habitats these guys live in arid or semi-arid environments. They're commonly found in short grasslands as well as arid regions of the savannas, along woodland edges and open acacia woodlands. It prefers bare ground in areas that have been clipped short by grazing ungulates. It tends to hunt in these short grasses and low shrub habitats, although it does venture into areas of tall grasses when threatened. In addition to raising the young in den, they also use self-dug dens as shelter in extreme temperatures and winds. They also lie under acacia trees in South Africa to hide from the heat during the day. So these guys are the only truly insectivorous canid, and most of their diet is the harvester termite, which consists of about 80-90% of the diet. And even when it's not available, they kind of just eat whatever they can. In terms of invertebrates, they'll eat other arthropods such as ants, beetles, grasshoppers, crickets, millipedes, moths, scorpions and spiders, things like that. And really they'll eat, not very often, but they will eat small mammals, reptiles, fungi, and berries and season wild fruits. So mainly insectivorous, but they will eat what they can get. And they've also refused to feed on snouted harvester termites because they're not adapted to the chemical defenses of these guys, which I think is funny. Let's have a look. You're a cute baby, aren't you? Come here. Come on. Oh. There we are, you cute. Look at your big ears. So these guys have much smaller reduced teeth than other canids because of their insectivorous diet. And they're an old species that was widely distributed in the Pleistocene. And their teeth are not only really different, they also have like this steep like protrusion that's called the subangular process, which anchors large digastric muscles to allow rapid chewing. So that helps when they're getting insects, so they can lap them up. And these muscles also are modified to open the jaw 5 times per second, open and close the jaw 5 times per second, so they're pretty fast. So these bat-eared foxes usually hunt in groups, often splitting up to pairs of several subgroups moving around the same general area. When termites are plentiful, these feeding aggregations of up to 15 individuals of different families can occur, and they forage among other family groups alone and break apart in June and July during the months where they have cubs. So the prey is located primarily by auditory means rather than smell or sight, so they tend to hear them. Foraging patterns vary between season and population and coincide with the availability of termites. In Eastern Africa, they tend to forage at the night, but often in Southern Africa, they will forage during the summer in the night, but then as they come to winter, they will slowly start to come out more during the day, and also depends on the species and food type. So it really just depends on a lot of factors on what they will act like. So these guys are also monogamous, and though they have been observed having polygynous groups. In contrast to other canids, the bat-eared fox has a reversal in parental roles, where the male takes up the majority of the parental care, while the female kind of just does her own thing. Gestation lasts for 60 to 70 days, and females give birth to litters of 1 to 6 kits. Beyond lactation, which lasts 14 to 15 weeks, males take over grooming, defending, huddling, chaperoning, and carrying the young through the den sites. So young bat-eared fox dads are very good dads. They're clearly onto it. Additional male care and den attachment rates have been shown to have a direct correlation with cub survival rates. So a good dad means more happy and healthy cubs. Kits, I mean. But these females forage for food while she maintains milk production, what the pups heavily depend on. and she will often bring back, when they're weaned, she will often regurgitate food to feed the pups. So these have some commercial use for humans. They are important to control harvested termite populations, as these termites are considered pests. They are hunted for their fur by Botswanian natives, and additional threats to their population include disease. As I mentioned, like with the jackals, sometimes diseases can spread to these guys, which can hurt their population. So even though, luckily, there aren't too many big, serious threats to these guys, so they're kind of doing okay now. So they're kind of lucky in that respect. Well, they're just maturing now, so that worked out well. So now we're going to have a look at another similar animals to this guy. We've got the bad-eared fox, now we've got the Fennec fox, which I think it looks pretty adorable. So these guys are a small crepuscular fox native to the Sahara Desert, and they, like the bad-eared fox, they have these really, really big ears which they use to dissipate heat. They are the smallest species of canid, and their coat, eggs, and kidneys function to adapt to live in the desert with these high temperatures. So although they're very sensitive to hearing, they're very sensitive hearing to hear prey mostly underground, which they use to also detect predators, but also find their prey, which usually consists of insects, small mammals, and birds. They have a lifespan of up to 14 years of captivity and 10 in the wild, so they live pretty long for animals their size. The main predators these guys have are eagle owls, jackals, other large mammals are also pretty dangerous to these guys. These Fennec families dig out burrows in the sand for habitation and protection, and they can be as large as 120 meters squared, which is pretty big, especially for a little fox, and adjoin into burrows of other families. Precise population figures are not known, but are estimated to, by the frequency of sightings, they indicate that these guys are doing okay. There's not really a big threat of extinction. That's why they're considered least concern. And knowledge of social interactions is limited from gathering animals, unfortunately. But they usually assigned to the genus Vulpes, although this is debated due to Fennec fox and other fox species. And similar to the bad-eared fox, the Fennec fox's fur is prized by indigenous peoples in North Africa, and in some parts of the world are often considered exotic pets. So, yeah. These guys, unlike bad-eared fox, which are primarily insectivorous, these guys will eat all sorts of small things. They're more omnivorous. They'll eat small rodents, lizards, geckos, skinks, small birds and their eggs, fruits, tubers, and pretty much whatever they can. They to drink water when they're available, but obviously in the desert it's not always. They also hunt alone and dig for small vertebrates and insects. And captive Fennec foxes reach sexual maturity about 9 months old and mate during January and April. They usually breed about once per year. The copulation tie lasts for about 2 hours and 45 minutes. 45 minutes, so that's a long time. Gestation lasts for about 50 to 52 days, sometimes up to 63 days. After mating, the male can be very aggressive and protects the female, provides her with food, and during pregnancy and lactation, so he's a good dad as well. Females give birth about March to June to a litter of 1 to 4 pups, and their eyes open about 8 to 11 days. Both the female and the male take care for pups, and they communicate by barking, purring, yapping, and squealing. Pups are remaining with their family even after a new litter is born, and the pups are weaned between 61 and 70 days, so it's all the good family effort there. So, as I mentioned, the threats that a lot of these guys face is exploitation for their furs, but they're doing okay because they're replacing their populations and can be considered an exotic pet. So, luckily there isn't really a trade for these guys to be illegally imported, so we're lucky there, even though they're bred commercially. So, they remove their pups, remove the pups from the mother and hand raise them to be more tame. And there's a registry, of course, in the United States. If you guys want to get through, you can have a look and see if you want to get a Fennec fox. So I would recommend that you do your research. With any exotic pet, they have a lot of very specialized needs that you're going to have to be aware of and provide for. So I wouldn't recommend getting a Fennec fox unless you're sure you want a Fennec fox. But these are very, very cute little animals and beautiful little guys. Let's see why you're sleeping in the dish. Where is the other ones? We'll have a look at the other ones. See if we can find the baby. Where? Look at these guys, very cute. Okay, now we're going to move on from the canids. We don't have any more canids. we've got a very, very cool bunch of animals. We've got the Aardwolf. So the Aardwolf is an insectivorous mammal native to eastern and southern Africa, also named the earth wolf in Afrikaans and Dutch, or termite-eating hyena, and that gives away to kind of what they're related to. And they're also called the civet hyena, which is they have a habit of secreting substances from its anal gland, which is similar to African civets. The Aardwolf is the same family as hyena, so there's 4 living species of hyena. There's the spotted hyena, there's the Aardwolf that you see here, then there's brown hyena, and I forgot the third one, striped hyena. It's striped hyena. They look kind of similar to the striped hyena, but these guys are much smaller. So these guys are unlike the other hyenas. Like you see a spotted hyena, they hunt big animals. These guys won't hunt big animals at all. They usually eat, they're very insectivorous. They'll only eat really termites and their larvae, but they will eat other small invertebrates. They can, in fact, one Aardwolf can lap up as many as 250,000 termites during a single night using its long tongue. And they've adapted their tongue to be strong enough to withstand bites. So it's a very interesting animal. So these guys have also this very, very, very thin striped hyena. They look very thin with a slender muzzle, so it's better adapted. They also live in eastern and southern Africa. The Aardwolf gets to about 55 to 80 centimeters long, excluding its bushy tail, which is about 20 to 30 centimeters long. And they stand about 40 to 50 centimeters tall at the shoulder and weigh about 7 to 10 kilograms, even though sometimes they can reach 15 kilograms. So the Aardwolves in the south continent tend to be smaller, about the 10 kilograms, while the eastern tend to be 14. And they're the smallest extant member of Hyenidae family, so they're the smallest living hyena. So, as I mentioned, they do still have canines, but unlike other hyenas, their teeth is usually for fighting and protection, and their ears are large and very similar to a striped hyena. So as I mentioned, the distribution, they live in open, dry plains and bushlands, avoiding mountainous areas, and because of their specific food requirements, they usually only live in areas where termites are common. So they usually avoid hanging out with farmland and stuff. And most of the year, they spend their time with shared territories of up to a dozen dens that occupy about 6 weeks at a time. So these guys are shy and nocturnal and sleeping in burrows during the day, and then they will occasion in the winter become diurnal feeders, but they tend to stay in their burrows at night and sleep. They have often been mistaken for solitary animals, but in fact they live in monogamous pairs with their young, so there's a lot of that going around today. If their territory is infringed upon, they will chase the intruder up to 400 meters or to the border. And if the intruder is caught, what really happens, a fight will occur with accompanied soft chuckling, horse barking, and type of roar, which is weird. So these territories, like other animals, are marked with both sexes, and they also have the developed anal gland, which they use to excrete a black substance on, where they smear on rocks and stuff that marks their territory. So an Aardwolf pair will probably have up to 10 dens with nubble middens within their territory. And these guys will deposit excreta in these middens and cover it with a small hole and cover it with sand. And these dens are usually abandoned. The dens that they usually abandon, like aardvark, porcupine, and springhead dens, on occasion crevices within rocks. They also dig their own dens, and the large ones are started by springhares. And they're not fast runners, but nor are they particularly adapted to fighting predators, so when they're threatened, they may attempt to mislead their foe by dumbing them back in its tracks. If confronted, they may raise their mane as attempt to look menacing and release a foul-smelling liquid from the anal gland, similar to like a skunk. So these guys breed very a lot during location. They usually, in southern Africa, they will breed in early July, and during the breeding season, they will usually unpaired Aardwolves will search their own territory, as well as others, for a female. Dominant males also mate opportunistically with the females and less dominant neighbouring Aardwolves, which can result in conflicts between rival males, so that's not good. Dominant males may even take a step further as the breeding season approaches. They may increasingly go into the weaker male's territory, and as the female comes to estrus, they add pacing to their tricks inside the other territory, and often will kind of just sneak in and do his thing. And given the opportunity, mate with the dominant male, which increases the chances of the dominant male guarding his cubs with hers. So that's a cool way to sneak it in. That's pretty cool. So gestation for these guys lasts about 80 to 92 days, producing 2 to 5 cubs during the raining season, which is November to December, when termites are more active. They're born with their eyes open, but initially helpless, and they weigh about 200 to 350 grams. The first 6 to 8 weeks they spend into the den, and the male may spend up to 6 hours a night watching over the cubs while the mother is looking for food. After 3 months they begin supervised foraging, and by 4 months they're normally pretty independent, and often share a den with their mother until the next breeding season. By the time the new set of cubs is born, the other cubs have moved on, and Aardwolves generally achieve sexual maturity about 1.5 to 2 years of age. So we're quite lucky that these guys have not seen decreasing numbers and are widespread across Africa. They're not particularly common though, and they maintain a density of no more than 1 per square kilometre. If food is abundant, beside these other factors, they're considered least concern. In some areas they are prosecuted because people believe that they hunt livestock or even mistake them for striped hyenas. But these guys, as I mentioned, are purely insectivorous, pretty much. They only eat termites. And they actually benefit farmers because they eat the termites, which affects the grasses for the cows. So it's kind of shooting yourself in the foot there. But some farmers have recognized this, but they're still killed on occasion for their fur. And also dogs and pesticides are also a common way to kill an Aardwolf. So they're doing okay though in terms of conservation, so they're not too much to worry about. Very cool animal though. Getting old though. So now we're going to be moving on to the second to last animal. We have got the Pallas cat. A very, very cool little cat. Look at you. Look at you. Aren't you cute? And we've got the pups and the cups and all that. These guys are also known as the Manu, which is a small wild cat with dense light grey fur with rounded ears. They get to about 46 to 65 centimeters long, with a 21 to 31 centimeter long bushy tail, and they are well camouflaged and adapted to the cold continental climates of their native range, which experiences little rainfall and a wide range of temperatures. So the Pallas cat was observed in the vicinity of Lake Balkhi in the early 19th century. It was reported to occur in Tibet and lots of other regions across Central Asia. It includes the Caucasus, the Iranian Plateau, Hindu Kush, parts of the Himalayas, the Tibetan Plateau, and the South Siberian Mountains. It inhabits the rocky mountain grasslands and shrublands of these areas, where snow cover is between 15 and 20 centimeters, and finds shelter in things like rock crevices and burrows, and prey mainly on lagomorphs that includes rabbits and pikas, along with rodents, and they usually give birth to 2 to 6 kittens in the spring. So these guys have a very wide range across Asia, and presumably large populations, so they're also considered least concern. And some populations are threatened because of poaching and prey bases declined and habitat fragmentation due to things like infrastructure projects and mining. But they are pretty cool. Ooh, getting pretty grumpy. I think there's probably too much in here, but we will sort that out soon. So yeah, these guys have this really, really cool fur. They have this light grey fur, and it's very long. It can be blackish sometimes, and these long whiskers and such. And these eyes are also encapsulated by this white ring there that gives them a lot of personality and stuff. They get about the same size as a domestic cat with a stocky and dense fur, so they just look really extra fluffy. And they get between, as I mentioned, 46 to 65 centimeters long, and they weigh between 2.5 and 4.5 kilograms. So there, they have a very, very wide and ranged habitat going through most of Central Asia, from the Caucasus and Lake Balkhi to Siberia, southern Siberia, so they have a very large range. And they're doing pretty well in that range, hopefully. And they're solitary, but they have been observed in captivity. 2 of the males scent marked by spraying urine. So they usually use caves, rock crevices, and marmot burrows as shelter, and they just kind of use that, so they don't need to dig their own burrows and such. They have general home ranges of 74 to 125 kilometers squared. It just depends on prey availability and what areas they're living in, and it is overlap with other Pallas cats, so they can find each other and find mates if they need to. So these guys usually eat a lot of rodents, such as long-tailed ground squirrels, flat-skulled shrews, Pallas pikas, bird feathers as well, other type of pikas, many different species of sort of pikas, squirrels, voles, and also a lot of remains of things like passerine birds, beetles, and grasshoppers. And they're usually made about once a year. They're sexually mature at about a year old, and the estrus between 26 to 42 hours, and gestation lasts about 66 to 75 days. So in the wild, they give birth to a litter of about 4 to 6 kittens, around the ends of April and early May. Late May, I mean. They have this really cute fur. If you've seen a newborn Pallas cat, they're so cute. And their eyes are covered until about 2 weeks old. In Central Mongolia, several females with kittens were observed in 20 for 60 days. Their maternal dens were either among rocks or former burrows of the Tabajan marmot, and at least 2 entrances. In Iran, the Pallas cats were observed using cavities of aged Greek junipers as breeding dens with a litter of up to 4 cubs. So these cubs are usually 2 months old. They usually weigh between 500 and 6 grams, and their fur gradually goes longer. They start hunting about 5 months old and reach adult size about 6 to 7 months. So a lot of the threats of these guys are also hunted for the fur in large numbers, and more than 10,000 skins annually usually found. So the hunting of these Pallas cats decreased in the 1970s when they became legally protected. Mongolia exported 9,185 skins in 1987, but international trade has ceased for their skins since 1988. However, domestic trade of these skins is kind of still common, but they may be hunted throughout the year, but it's not at an extent. There's no international trade for them, so it's sort of manageable. So cases of herding dogs killing these cats were reported in Iran, Kazakhstan, and the Atali region. They've also fallen victims to traps set for small mammals in Kazakhstan, and other things. They have uses of rodent pesticides and such. Also have decreased their prey base, and they're also poison predators as well. So like these guys and raptors that live in the area. So that's a big issue. And that just affects the biomass. If you get rid of all of the rodents, that means these guys are going to have less food. But they seem to be doing okay. These guys are listed as endangered, but they proposed to be listed as critically endangered in some areas. They're considered least concern across the whole range, though. It just depends on the population. But yeah, these guys are very, very cool. I love these guys. Very cool animal. And now we've got a cool animal that you wouldn't expect to see in Planet Zoo, but you'd more likely see it in Prehistoric Kingdom or even Jurassic World Evolution. We have got Triceratops horridus, which I think is a really cool animal. We got another one here. So this is Triceratops horridus. If you guys don't know your dinosaurs, Triceratops horridus was a giant ceratopsian, so a horned dinosaur, that appeared in the late Maastrichtian stage of the late Cretaceous, which is about 68 to 66 million years ago of what is now North America. So these guys, if you guys know your dinosaurs, these guys were one of the last dinosaurs to live before the meteor impact of 66 million years ago, living with animals like Tyrannosaurus and Ankylosaurus and Montosaurus. So these guys kind of resemble a rhinoceros. They have this very, very big frill with these 3 horns. That's where they get the name Triceratops, 3-horned face. And they have this very big body. They got to about 7 to 8 tons, even 10 tons, I've heard some people say. Lots of very big estimates. They're very big animals. Similar in size to elephants. And these guys get up to about 9 meters long, and then, as I mentioned, 10 to 12 metric tons, so very big. These guys often, as I mentioned, shared the landscape with animals like Tyrannosaurus, which is probably one of their main predators. And there have been 2 species described. There was the earlier T. horridus and then the T. porosus. So this is I believe is horridus. So this is the older species. And sometimes there's another ceratopsian called Torosaurus, which is believed to be a growth stage of Triceratops, which is not very commonly supported, but some people still like to believe in it. So these guys also have these large horns that they use, probably for defense, but also mainly most likely for jousting, similar to how antlers and horns and rhinoceroses are used today. but obviously would be good as a skewer for a Tyrannosaurus. So this guy was described by Othniel Charles Marsh in like 1889, so that's a long time ago, and has pretty much become one of the most popular dinosaurs of all time, up there with Tyrannosaurus and like Brontosaurus and a lot of the very famous dinosaurs. So I think he's a very cool guy. So these guys, what's also really cool, I think, what they did with the model with this one, is that we have found a lot of evidence of growth stages of these guys. So we can see these babies here. They have these turned over horns here, and as they grow older and older, they tend to move out like that. And there's been a lot of research into how they grow, and even dinosaurs like Pachycephalosaurus and Tyrannosaurus, as they grew, they took over different niches in the ecosystem. So if you were to compare this to mammals, because mammals don't really have that, because they're kind of born and they live off their mother, and then they become their adult niche. These guys were living in multiple different niches as they grew through the ecosystem. So it's pretty much, for these guys, imagine going from a rabbit to a wild boar to a rhino to an elephant through your lifetime. That's basically the best way I can describe it. And I think that's so cool, that how different these ecosystems were, but yet so similar to modern ecosystems dominated by mammals, whether these dinosaurs, obviously, they weren't born with so much parental care. They were just kind of laid their eggs. Some were even just laid, even the large sauropods, they just kind of dug a hole, laid their eggs, and ran off. But these guys kind of did the same thing, probably. But mammals today, they take a lot of effort and take care of the young. They usually have, if you compare elephants, which are a similar size to Triceratops, they'll only have a baby, they spend 2 years pregnant, and then they will raise them for the next like 10 to 15 years in their herds. So it shows how different these ecosystems were, and I think it's pretty cool to have this guy. Interesting mod, I say. I don't want to be mean, it's just, obviously putting this over Triceratops is not going to look the most accurate. You can see that the back's probably way too high, the body's too long, and it's not walking correctly. But considering it's a dinosaur on a mammal, I think they did the best job that they could. And I think it's cool to see this animal in the game. And you can see this is inspired a lot by Saurian. You can see these wonderful spotted patterns on the babies that I love. Saurian's probably got one of the best, if not the best, trike designs in media. And it's just pretty cool. So, yeah. I think that's about covers all these mods for today. So I'll let you out here. So, I really hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to get that little bell icon to get notified when I upload anything. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, guys. Like and subscribe, and bye-bye.